Welcome to On the Beat, where we bring you a different Buffalo Bills beat reporter every week, exclusively on the Overreaction Sports Network.
Well, what is going on, everybody? Welcome everybody into On the Beat on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe, a show where we bring you a different Buffalo Bills beat reporter or journalist every single week. Please do us a favor. Please like, please subscribe, whatever platform you are consuming this vidcast on right now. If it's live, please do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button. If you are consuming this in post, and that's a reminder, if you ever miss anything that we do, you can find all of our podcasts on every single platform that's out there. Please like and subscribe there as well. It is so good to have every single one of you with us for this. It's Thanksgiving week. It's the end of a bye week, so it's officially a Bills football week. I think this is the Jerry might do a show tomorrow night, but this was probably one of two of the only shows we're going to do this week. But it's a pleasure having all of you with us. And right now I want to welcome into the program sports anchor for WKBW Channel 7 right here in Buffalo, Dom Tibbetts. Dom, so good to have you. First timer, Dom, on our program. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Joe. Thank you for having me on. Pleased to make my rookie debut here. Hoping to come on like a Paul Skeens type-esque rookie debut here on Overreaction. So no, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
It's good to have you. You're gonna crush it. So my wife said to me as I'm upstairs before the show starts, and she's like, so you've got one, she's got to know what's going on, right? Because we do this every day, and Mondays there's two shows, and so there's an aspect of this at this point in the season where she is very much over it. Right? Like, you're always in the basement in the studio. I need you to be around the family a little more. So she's like, you have a show? And I'm like, yes. She's like, what? And she's asking me the question. So I told her, Dom Tibbetts from WKBW is going to be on. She's like, you going to ask him about Thanksgiving? And I'm like, probably not. She's like, well, you should. And it's like, okay. So here comes my obligatory Thanksgiving question to you. Are you one of the cooks, or are you still at this point in time when it comes to family and Thanksgiving, or are you just an attender and an eater, I guess is the question.
Yeah, an absolute attender and eater. I'm going to say far away from the kitchen. I grew up around a lot of Italian women that kind of take the precedent on that one. They kind of go in the kitchen. You don't get to go in there with them. If you try to go in there, take a little sample, they'll tell you to get right out of there, go back and sit down, go talk with grandpa, go talk to the uncles, stay out of the kitchen. And I'm fine with that. I'm good with it. I'm 28 now. It's been that way all 28 years I've been alive. So I'm good with that.
I grew up in a very large Irish Italian home in the southern tier of New York State, and very similar. And so this is the question, and it always baffled my wife when we've been married for 23 years now. It always baffled her when we first were getting together and dating, and then first married. At my family's house for Thanksgiving and Christmas specifically, we always had turkey and or ham, usually, as well as lasagna and spaghetti and sauce. And she was always like, you have lasagna at Thanksgiving? And I'm like, yeah, doesn't everybody? So I guess
some sort of pasta dish. Yep. Pasta dish, meatballs, lasagna. So I was not a big lasagna guy, and for some reason I held a lot of political power at the Thanksgiving dinner table. So my grandma would never make lasagna because her boy being me in the situation, was not a lasagna guy. So it's just straight pasta with the sauce and meatballs, maybe ziti. Nice. If we're going to throw a curveball in there, with all the traditional Thanksgiving food that you'd find.
That's awesome. Well, we're glad that you're here. Thank you so much for joining us, taking a little bit of time out of your schedule.
Of course.
It is Thanksgiving week, and I know that you've got some requirements tomorrow as media day is tomorrow for the Buffalo Bills, getting ready for this 49ers game. So let's just jump right into this real quick, and let's start with the obvious, because we have had one, I'm going to use a bad word, we've had one hell of a fall here in Buffalo, New York, and Western New York as far as weather goes. Just mild, and I think it was 57 degrees on Monday and Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken, or I'm sorry, on Sunday and Monday, right? Today's Tuesday.
Yep.
But it looks like it's going to turn. We're going to get some snow this weekend. So what is the latest? What are you hearing from the weather guys over there at WKBW?
Well, it's funny because I actually talked to Aaron Mankowski, our chief meteorologist, at 7, because I was asking him, I'm like, hey, I'm going to be home at the end of this week for Thanksgiving, and my plan was to come back very early Sunday since it's a Sunday night kickoff.
Right.
But I was like, do I need to leave Saturday? How's the thruway going to look? And he said, it all depends on how vicious the wind is. Western New Yorker's not, strangers to the wind or snow for that matter. But he beat me right to the next question, was how's Sunday going to look? And he told me it is going to be a snow game. So I am fully prepared for my snow pants to come on, the boots, the hat and gloves. It had to end at some point, right? We've been getting so lucky, like the Dolphins game a few weeks ago. I was like, what are we doing here? It's like there's September weather here we're getting in like early November. Like it ran its course. I'm happy for it, but winter was going to come some way or the other here, and we'll just have to get ready for it on Sunday.
Is there an expectation on accumulation? Did he give you that expectation, or is it still somewhat unknown depending on how the wind blows?
I didn't get any number on just accumulation, but if there's anything that, working here for 2 years now has taught me about covering a team that plays in the South towns, just be prepared for the worst.
Yeah. Going back to the Miami Dolphins game, it's funny because I tell people this often, and every year, inevitably, it happens at least once. I'm a season ticket holder. I sit on the visitor side, row one of the upper deck on the 30-yard line. So I'm on the sun side, right? Which if it's August or early September, we have the potential to melt like whatever it was a couple of years ago when it was like 105 degrees in the stadium and the stadium ran out of water, which has happened twice in my lifetime of being a season ticket holder. But in the winter game, specifically like this one, the Dolphins game, I should say, it's interesting because it was 52, I think, that day or something like that. And I think I had this hoodie on and I took it off. So I'm sitting there in a t-shirt, the sun's beating me in the face, and I can see the people on the other side of the stadium in the shade, like bundled up, cold, shivering. Yeah. And it's funny just kind of how the weather can be different per the side of the field, but we see that in Miami as well. They get to play in the shade on their side, and obviously,
it's only fitting it happens to Miami, right? Because there's the stark 180 contrast of two sidelines down at Hard Rock, so it's only fitting.
I'm interested to see how the new stadium is going to turn out as far as with the partial covered and all that kind of stuff. If we end up buying in, which is still up in the air, just as it pertains to the PSLs and whatnot, but that's a conversation for a different day. Injuries. So I know that when we came into the bye week, there was a great expectation about getting a lot of guys healthy, getting some guys back. Obviously, Matt Milano being the first one. Just looking for if any expectations have changed, if you've heard any rumors as far as that goes around the Bills. Milano, Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, Spencer Brown, Dwayne Smoot, and Dwayne Carter. Is there any movement on any of those guys, both backwards or forwards?
I think with Matt, because that's the big name, right? Yeah. Everybody's waiting for Matt Milano's return. I don't think it's rumored. I don't think anybody here is going to be shocked or surprised to see him play on Sunday. I think that's the whole way that from the time we first saw him back at practice a few weeks ago, progressing to this point, it always felt like, okay, you attack after the bye. You probably put him on some sort of a snap count. I cannot imagine Matt Milano going full 100% in this game. But just getting him out there in some capacity, I think is important at this stage of the season. So my expectation, I think a lot of people, I was just talking to Beauvais about this earlier, Milano will play. I think that's everybody's expectation. If you ask anybody else who covers this team, even fans for that matter, Joe, like people are going to think that Matt is on there. Keon too. I think it's the same boat, similar with Keon, as I think we're going to see him back. Obviously, good juice back into the offense against a San Francisco team who's going to come in playing so desperate in a must-win territory, very similar to what Miami was a couple of weeks ago when they took on Buffalo. Dwayne Carter, Dwayne Smoot, all these guys just kind of waiting in the works to see from McDermott tomorrow what we hear. How it is with Sean. It's like you never know what you're going to get on a Wednesday compared to what the injury report looks on Friday. If you're trying to keep the competitive advantage, he's probably going to tell us that Milano's limited and Keon's limited and Dwayne Carter might be limited, so on and so forth, with probably Spencer Brown and all these other guys who are a little nicked up going into the bye. But the main guy being Matt, expectation to me is that he is going to see the field on Sunday.
Is that based off what you guys have all seen just from him in practice prior to the bye week, just the movement and like the videos that we saw, just you guys be like from what you've seen from him? Is that why that expectation? Because I almost wonder if they would maybe wait another week. I'm just curious.
I don't want to speculate just because I am not a doctor. I'm a journalist with a degree in television, radio. But I look at just this is a Dom Tibbetts bare eye analysis on Matt Milano. There's nothing to me that sounds like or looks like, this is a guy who we need to slow it down a little bit.
Right.
It feels like, McDermott is not somebody in his tenure who's ever been very jumpy, been too aggressive with injuries, unless we're getting to the playoffs. Like Daquan Jones, perfect example last year. Daquan probably should never have played in the playoffs,
right.
Right. So, but like instances like that, you push yourself to. So you take that kind of factor out of it. There's nothing to me that I've seen or really anybody I've talked to that covers this team that tells me that Milano isn't making the progress that you needed to see for him to see some sort of game action on Sunday.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's exciting. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Keon, obviously with the wrist injury. We haven't heard much about Dalton Kincaid at all as far as that knee. All we heard was it's a knee, and we hope we don't have to put him on IR. But yeah, I mean, Spencer Brown, I would expect to be back. Dwayne Carter, I think, was on IR, so they have to reactivate him. They have to open his window, if I'm not mistaken. So we probably won't see him, but hopefully we'll get maybe an update as far as just when that reactivation will happen. But I think the Mafia will be very, very excited to see him get back. What's interesting about Milano coming back too is, like, obviously you're sitting Dorian Williams, and Dorian Williams has been, he's had his moments where he's been out of position, over pursued, missed a gap or an assignment here or there, but he's played solid football for this football team. I think he's leading the team in tackles.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's exciting to get Milano back, but at the same time, you are sitting down a guy that a guy's probably moving to, second team reps. Obviously not probably, he's moving to second team reps, and who knows, he might make an impact on special teams. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this whole thing unfolds in the next couple of weeks. It brings up an interesting conversation, though, as it pertains to just this roster and the expectations that we had kind of coming in, and not only just us as fans, you guys as local media, even the national media, and I would dare I say the Bills. I mean, the expectations that the Bills had around a soft rebuild is kind of where we've kind of all landed on this thought. And it looks like Brandon Beane is quietly, maybe unknowingly, put together one of the most balanced rosters he's had in his tenure. And obviously it's I don't want to say devoid, but it's missing superstars: Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Stephon Diggs. Like, I remember I don't remember what year it was, sitting in my seat and they're doing the announcements, and Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, and these guys are coming out of the tunnel, and I looked at my dad, I was like, superstars. Like, we got superstars on this football team, and we're devoid of those now, other than probably Josh Allen, right? Thoughts on just like the roster that he's put together this year and how they're outperforming that roster?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start saying they have exceeded expectations. Let's just call it what it is. The Buffalo Bills have exceeded everybody's expectations. If you are somebody who's going to come to me and be like, the Bills, I had them at 9-2 going into San Francisco after the bye, I was going to say you're lying.
You did. You had them at 9-2?
No, I'm sorry. I'm saying that if anybody was going to tell me, yes, my prediction was just like last season, 11-6. Because I thought, you're right, soft rebuild, but you have 17 under center. You're going to find ways to win more games than you're going to lose with him at quarterback, right? Right. But I think the thing that I always go back to when you look at this roster is how Beane has put together just some utility guys, guys who know their role, play in their role, want to play in that role. The everybody eats thing is, I think, one of the more maybe best descriptors of offensively is how this team has kind of found their gel, found their mix. And of course, goes back to Allen leading the way. But I think just from McDermott down to Joe Brady to Bobby and all their support staff under them, they've just found ways to get the best out of each person pretty much game in and game out, like squeezing every last drop out of the towel basically, and then re-getting it, re-wetting it for the next game, for a lack of a better analogy there too. So it doesn't lack the big star power aside from Josh Allen. Sure. But you put a couple, let's call it medium stars together, and it could, you get the same equivalent as having some superstar guy. I mean, offensively, you wish there was somebody who could take the vertical threat down. Maybe that's what Amari Cooper becomes as he gets more chemistry with Josh and things progress there with him. Defensively, you always feel like the Bills don't necessarily need superstars because they already have some emerging. Example, Christian Benford. That guy is a dog, absolute dog. So I think a lot of that credit has to go to the Beane finding the right guys and the right fit and letting it simmer, because there's a lot of people I think of like Matt Collins and Curtis Samuel. Now, mind you, Curtis has had one big game so far, but Mac has turned into a very pleasant surprise in the past month or so. But before that, you'd be a lot of people who were scratching their heads about what was Matt Collins doing on this offense. So He was patient with it, and I think he's been burned by that. Yeah, he's been, I think, like, perfect example, like, Bean's been burned by a guy like Wyatt Teller, like, not waiting for a guy to develop and be there. So I think he was patient. McDermott and his staff have gotten the best out of everybody. It's a long-winded answer, Joe, but they've exceeded expectations, and I give a lot of credit to the staff to, use the talent they have to be in the position where they are.
Yeah, I catch crap even still from my co-hosts, John Fina and Jerry Ostrowski, because early in the season, I was very much in the boat of stop throwing it to Mac Hollins. And it wasn't a situation of Mac being bad or just it not being great. It felt like Josh, and I got this from Mookie Hawkins, also a Bills beat reporter, early in the summer, like when training camp was going on, and he was like, Josh loves Mac. Like, Mac is making this football team. There's no way, because back then it was like, well, they've got like 8 guys. They're all 6'5". Chase Claypool's on the team at that point. It's like, who's going to make this roster? And Mookie was like, Mac's making this football team. And early in the season, Josh was just throwing it to him, like double covered, triple covered. If Josh was in trouble, Mac's out there somewhere, and it just wasn't going well. But Mac is now kind of finding a rhythm. Obviously, Amari Cooper has helped that a lot. I think even, I don't want to say emergence of Khalil Shakir, because Khalil is a guy that he was a known asset coming into the season, but he's forcing defenses to keep an eye on him, which is allowing Mac Hollins to find some windows and some spaces, and it's working right now, which is great. It's a great segue into just kind of the next set of questions that I have for you. Talking with Dom Tibbetts from WKBW, sports anchor for Channel 7, which is awesome. Great to have you. When you look at some of these guys and some of these contracts, one of the things that I like to say is they're never going to be cheaper than they are today. We used to have that conversation about Tre'Davious White when his contract was up, and some other Ed Oliver. Like, he's never going to be Josh Allen. He's never going to be cheaper than he is right now. In 2024, you've got interesting guys in Amari Cooper, who right now is costing the Buffalo Bills $800,000. And I feel like we looked at the offseason and we heard Brandon Beane, and even though the fans and the media, you guys were all like, you got to have a number one. You got to have a number one. And like the Bills were pumping out this, everybody eats. And then finally we all were like, okay, we trust you. We'll trust the process. Let's see what everybody eats looks like. And it didn't look good. And then the Bills went and got Amari Cooper. And I guess that's a question. When you look at the two guys coming up, the main guys that are coming up in 2024, contracts ending, Rasul Douglas and Amari Cooper, thoughts on extensions for those guys? I feel like they got to keep both those guys, don't they?
It's really interesting. Amari, I think if you had to, you had to make one decision. I lean more Rasul than I would Amari Cooper.
Agreed.
But I think they both have an interesting case for whether you do or you don't. I think Rasul is more locked in because you were hoping that it could be a Benford and Kyer Elam, get your first round pick to manifest into the cornerback that he needs to be, and it just doesn't look like it's there. Good depth piece, special teams guy. But if you're, and I'm thinking of guys in 2025 that we'll get into, right? Like if you have a plan to keep Benford, you're going to want to pair him with somebody. So to me, it's like, why not? Rasul has been, Matt, I remember after the Jets, I think it was the Jets game last year, Matt and I were doing our web recap. And we were both like, Rasul Douglas might be one of the best free agent, mid-season trades that Brandon Beane has ever pulled off as general manager of the Buffalo Bills. Amari, it's so early with him. You've seen the flashes, and you're like, in my opinion, I'm seeing what the potential is, what it could do for this offense. Because again, going back to the everybody eats thing, and you're right, everybody eats is a really cool thing for training camp stories in the first couple weeks of the preseason. But like when everybody's at the table and no one's eating, no, that's not good. That's where that's where a little bit of like the Diggs fatigue came in. And then obviously that's all manifesting when they're playing the Texans. So it's just like, it's a world collision of a headache going on. So I would like to think that Amari is a guy they're going to want to keep. I think he is a guy who quietly just goes about his business. That's what Beane said in the opening press conference about him, is that you guys probably aren't going to hear him talk that much. He's a soft-spoken guy. He truly is. So I need to see a little bit more about what Amari Cooper can do when he's fully healthy, can get more chemistry down with Josh, and continue to just get reps in this offense. But if everything goes the right way, Joe, you absolutely make the case for both of them. And for me, I'm absolutely giving Rasul Douglas an extension.
Yeah, well, 2 years. I mean, you're not talking about 3 or 4 or anything like that. But Amari, you hope that the Bills are in a good position, with Amari Cooper in the sense of like he's been injured this year already. He has, I don't want to say injury issues, but there's times that he's missed games throughout his career. You hope they can get him for less than 24 million or some stupid number, right? But then that leads into 2025, which you started talking a little bit about as well, which is, next year, at the end of that year, you're talking about Christian Benford, you're talking about Terrell Bernard, you're talking about Groot, you're talking about Shakir, and there's others, Cook, McGovern, Epinesa, like there's other guys out there. But when you look at those top 4 guys, Shakir, Groot, Bernard, Benford, this is where it gets tough, bro, because all the Pagula bucks. I remember having a conversation with Greg Thompson from Cover One years ago before Tre'Davious signed his extension here. And Greg was like, he's going to get all the Pagula bucks. And we were so focused on getting Tre'Davious White re-signed as a Buffalo Bill. And then he gets injured. And then these guys emerge. And Sean McDermott, to his credit, is able to put these guys in positions to just become the best versions of themselves. That's the phrase that we all know. And it's funny because you talk about Christian Benford, and I agree with you. He's a dog, but it's like, do you let that guy go to keep Terrell Bernard? Because to me, this defense is different with Terrell Bernard and then Shakir and Groot. If you're looking at those 4 guys, because I don't think Cook is getting re-signed. Because Ray Davis, I don't think they want to give a running back a second contract at 14-15 million a year. But I think McGovern has to get re-signed. But you look at Shakir, Groot. If I'm going to put you on the spot, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Shakir, Groot, Bernard, Benford. You got to re-sign 2 of those guys. You're looking to re-sign 2 of those guys this summer. Shakir, Groot, Benford, Bernard, and Benford. Which 2 of the 4 are you going after this summer?
Well, you made it hard because, I was ready to be like, yeah, James, because I'm with you on James Cook.
Yeah.
He's the easiest one. He's just not. Like, when you stack him up against who he's up against there in this decision, absolutely not.
Right.
So this question has been on my mind the last week and a half, and it's actually something I did during one of our newscasts during the bye week when I was just, trying to, draw Bills content. If I had to pick, you already know, I said it earlier about how Christian Benford.
Yeah.
Benford is one of the 2, and I'll let you get
the hook. I'm not saying that they can't go after the other 2 or one of the other 2 that are left over at the end of 2025. I'm just saying, if you're looking to move on 2 now or at the end of this season, who are the 2 you're going after?
Bernard and Benford.
The
defense. It's the same argument you can make for Taron Johnson like the defense is just so placed to such a closer elite level when Terrell Bernard is on the field. And that's never more evident than the Kansas City game. What a difference. Terrell having such a good game 2 weeks ago in Kansas City it probably kills Bills fans to think what life could have been in last year's divisional game against this team if Bernard was healthy. And just the way that Benford has emerged. He has turned to everything that you wanted and Tre'Davious White was going to be before his injury bug kind of hit him, unfortunately. So if I had to move on 2 guys, you lock up 2 pieces of your defense that will forever make you a top 10 defense with literally just those 2 guys and a couple of the key pieces in there mixed in.
I think I agree. And the reason that I agree is you go into Groot's 5th-year option, right? In the sense of hoping he doesn't end up with like 17 sacks, right? And then he turns into a $30 million player. And I don't think the style that he plays, we'd love it if it happened, but I don't think the style that he plays necessarily lends itself to him having those kind of gaudy numbers. He's an edge setter. He's great against the run, and he's effective at what he does. But he's not going to be Von Miller year 5, right? Going back to what Von Miller was year 5, and Shakir, Shakir probably has that one position. He's probably the one guy out of this list. Benford, I think, is a known quantity. I think Bernard is a known quantity, and I think Groot is too. I think Shakir is the only one that next year, if you let him get into his final year of his contract, he could put you in a position of having to, go to the open market and getting $25 million a year, 26. It's just what he does and what he brings to this team, specifically this offense. I watched that Chiefs game. I watched it twice over the bye week again. So I've seen it now 4 times. I was there, and then I've watched it 3 times since. And there's that one pass, that bubble screen that he caught, and he catches the ball and he dips inside and then takes another dip inside and gets open, and he goes for whatever it was, 22 or 23 yards. And even guys that run these routes that are bigger than him, that are like, this is how they make their living, don't do that. They don't cut inside twice to find. It's going to be interesting to kind of see where that ends. I can't disagree with you. I think Bernard and Benford are the two guys that if you can lock two guys up this offseason, that's who you go after. You expect to know what you have with Groot. And then I think Shakir is just the guy that could really do himself a lot of favors at the end of the day from a generational wealth standpoint, right? I mean, he could really do something. But
and Shakir is such a bargain, like for this team right now. So it's just depending on banking on a guy. Maybe he finds some team friend. I don't really know any NFL player who's looking for the most team friendly of team friendly deals anymore. But yeah, like you want to use. Because I use the same argument with James Cook. Is like, as good as James Cook is in this offense, with Ray Davis' emergence and with the ability that you can find pieces like Ray and Drass, or you sign these, I'm going to call them lower tier, but cheaper free agent signings.
Yeah.
I want to be like, oh, you can find another Khalil Shakir. And I'm sure there's another receiver that can fit in the same skill set, but it's not Khalil Shakir. And it's hard for me to believe that Khalil Shakir's prototype, or somebody who can do the things, especially with the yards after catch that he can do, that is out there or is coming up in the draft, and you have to wait a year or two or three to develop. So he makes the most difficult. If there's anybody who has an extreme amount of leverage in those top four, I mean, you can put Shakir, you could almost put him at 1 or 2. He has so much leverage in this situation.
Excellent. Yeah, super, super good. So talking with Dom Tibbetts. One more question for you, then I'll let you go, and I'll let you get on to your the rest of your Thanksgiving week here. Before I ask you this last question, tell everybody where they can find your socials, find your work, find your stuff, where they can hear more stuff as far as just content that you're creating.
Cool. No. So over at WKBW.com, go to the sports section. We're constantly posting content from Sabres and Bills, all the way down to UB and all the good high schools that are playing around here. Socially, on X, and I still call it Twitter, every handle I have from X to Instagram, and I just recently joined Blue Sky and Threads. It's all at Dom Tibbetts or Dom Tibbetts TV, all lowercase, one word. So head on over, shoot me a follow. I like to say that, I just, keep the people entertained. I try to deliver as much content. That's what people love. Yeah. Like when I was researching this job, when I was first getting hired here, like I saw the way that like guys like Beauvais and Dan Fates did their job. And like, I know how much people love it. So I try to give that as much. I try to, be in the middle of every post-game handshake between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes to give that to you. So a follow would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, and so are those two guys, two of my favorites. So this is the last question I have for you. How important, in your opinion, just knowing what the Bills have accomplished? So, five playoffs in 6 years, 4 AFC East championships. Are about to have their 5th. If everything goes right this weekend, they'll have it this weekend locked up. They have not accomplished the number 1 seed and getting that first round bye, guaranteeing that the playoffs go through Buffalo. Last year, last year they obviously got the number 2 seed, which guaranteed that it went through Buffalo up until the AFC Championship game, provided the number 1 seed did not get kicked out. So all that to ask this question: how important in your mind is it for the Bills to check off that box, that next box, and kind of that progression, the number 1 seed? How important is it this year?
Compared to everything else of what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish in the playoffs, I don't think it's that important. I think the Bills will probably, if all things go well and they continue to win the games they should, I think they'll, just don't, without knowing what Kansas City is going to do. I mean, we saw them almost shake a loss against Carolina on Sunday, right? So I don't think it's nearly as important. I think what the most important thing is that you've got the ability and the team that you didn't think you were going to have this year, but you've somehow manifested it. You have a team this year to finally take advantage of the window that is still open, and it's not going to close if it doesn't happen this year. So I can miss me with all the window close conversations.
Yes.
But I think it's way more important to get over the hump. And it's not just like, oh, we got to beat Kansas City in the playoffs. It is go to the game. The one that said with an S and a B, I don't want to say it because I don't want to like jinx the opportunity to go cover the biggest event in all of sports. It's not the Olympics. But I think everybody knows what I'm talking about right now. I think that is way more important. It's meeting those expectations than it is the 1 seed. I think the 1 seed is just a really nice luxury to have on that road to get there. But I always think back to last year, Joe. It's like you got everything you needed. You got Kansas City coming to your house in that game, and what did it get you? So that's where I fight, or I don't know how important it is, because I just think the Bills are good enough. They can beat anybody, anywhere, anytime. And they're also, flawed enough where, and teams are good enough. It's the NFL where teams can beat them anywhere, anytime, any place.
It got you a missed field goal and the worst fake punt I've ever seen, as far as one of the worst timed and worst executed fake punts I've ever seen. So but that again is a conversation. Dom, we'll get you on again. You have been great, and thank you so much for just the generosity of your time, just being with us. Any last things before I get us out of here?
No, just if you're at the stadium, just look forward to seeing you Sunday. You'll see me bundled up, looking like an Eskimo with my camera on the sideline. So, and Bills Mafia, if you're listening, I understand it's Sunday Night Football. Pace yourself. All right. Long day ahead. Okay. Alcohol consumption does not mean your body's actually staying warm. Okay. So just be careful and responsible out there.
Yeah.
But no, thank you, Joe. It's been a pleasure, and looking forward to next time you have me on.
That was great. You definitely don't want to wake up with black fingers from frostbite, right?
No kidding.
Dead fingers and dead toes, dead end of your nose. Yeah, you want to make sure you're taking care of yourself. That was awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, take Dom's advice. Make sure you dress warm and stay as sober as you possibly can. At least negotiate the weather, right? Don't get a little bit foolish. But so good to have every single one of you joining us for On the Beat on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe. So this week, if I'm not mistaken, I know that we've got an If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo on Friday. I know that because they were just taping it. And then I believe the Big O Show with Jerry Ostrowski, your first preview from Overreaction, will be tomorrow, I believe, Wednesday. But it was so good to have every single one of you joining us. Appreciate it. As always, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Enjoy the family time. Enjoy the snow. My wife is really excited about the snow, Dom. I'm not, but she's really, really excited. But for me, for John, for Jerry, for all of us here at Overreaction, appreciate you guys. Love you. Go Bills. Oh, you got to hit the right button.